Yeah, hello there. I just wanted to make a small video about some theory crafting, I would say, in terms of specs, what to run between level 70 and level 80. Maybe if you have any plans to go from 60 to 70 by grinding dungeons, this might be also helpful. So just bear with me. This is my thoughts. I will just go over a talent or couple of talent trees I think which might be viable and which is mostly, I would say, related to 70 to 80 in a 5-group hardcore leveling, more or less. So yeah, we'll just see, swap some points around, but let's just go into it. So I would start with the, I would say, more or less default blood spec I would recommend if you have 2 specs with dual specialization, which will come into play when rough classic hits. So you have actually 2 talent trees you can fill. So I would definitely, in terms of tanking, recommend going 1 into blood, because this is, I would say, the default tank build you will be using more or less also in late game rough or even in early game rough, more or less. So let's get right into it. So for here, I honestly don't want any of butchery nor subversion, although this might be a damage increase in general. I don't really see the point in this, and I feel the points are well spent here. So for me, this is more or less a no-brainer. And I will just go with five points of Blade Barrier, because it will decrease damage taken by 5%. This should be up in general, I would say, most of the time, because you will have blood runes on cooldown if you follow just a basic rotation. So, and what's also interesting, as far as I understand, this also includes magical damage, because it says damage taken by 5%, which is something which I honestly like very much. So coming to the next tier, we see Bladed Armor. I find Bladed Armor is a very important key talent you should always take. I'm running with 5 points here usually, because I feel it's very worth it. As a tank, you will try to stack as much as mitigation as possible. Therefore, armor is an important factor into this, and this just converts it to more attack power, which is always good, of course. Looking at Ascent of Blood, I just feel like 1 point is enough, because I just feel this will be active a lot. Generally, because the more defensive stats you get in terms of dodging and parrying, the more mobs you take. If you have, for example, 7 or 8 mobs, this will be active all of the time. I really don't see a point in going further. It's just not worth it in my point of view. Of course, maybe this is something for min-maxing later on, but right now I just don't see the real purpose for it. The two-handed weapon specialization, for me, I don't really feel this is necessary. It's just a flat damage increase by 2% for my melee weapon. But although white hits are, of course, a lot of damage from a decade tank, it's not really important to me. At least that's what I would suggest, not taking it here. So Rune Tap, very essential, a core talent. This is a no-brainer. Also with tier 10 later on, you will get a very nice defensive cooldown out of this. But anyway, this is always very important. Also with this one, we'll see. I just think this is mandatory going for. Death Rune Mastery, for me also no-brainer, because it gives me a lot of utility. So for example, if I have 4 Death Runes and 2 Blood Runes available, and I have a Death and Decay down maybe, and just spread all my diseases, I can Blood Boil if I have a good healer and I don't need to Death Strike. So this leads to a lot of DPS in my point of view, which is nice. So I would always recommend taking Death Rune Mastery as a tank, because it's just a lot more versatile. Okay, improved Rune Tap, no-brainer, as I said, will increase the cooldown, will decrease the cooldown and also increase the healing done. So instead of 10%, this will result in 20% of your total health. and lower the cooldown by 30 seconds, so it's 30 seconds cooldown now. Then, of course, this is something I would say is more or less debatable. Spell deflection. This is really depending on, I would say, how good your combination in terms of group setup is. I tend not to take it because I feel like if you have enough melees, it's not really, I would say, not recommended because you have a lot of kicks maybe, so you will not take any big use out of this. But of course, this is what a DK tank is very strong at later on, because of course you can just skip a lot of damage just with this talent. Of course, it's some RNG. More or less, but in the end, of course, this is worth it in my point of view. Just go back to Dark Conviction real quick. I feel like taking it just for a sake of, I would say, more or less damage increase, but it's just an overall 3%, 2% crit increase at the moment. So I feel this is more valuable than something like this or this. This is just what I feel. So I would also, as I said, Spell Deflection, I would skip it. Looking at Vendetta, I see that this is something which is worth picking if you're questing, for example, if you're doing it for yourself. But for the purpose of dungeon running, I don't really see this making up a real issue, because if you have some good DPS, you will probably not kill a lot of mobs. I mean, in terms of last hit killing. So yeah, this will not be good in a dungeon comp. That's what I think, at least. Bloody Strikes. This is a very nice talent. It's in my point of view also no-brainer. You take it all of the time. Because it also increases our damage for Blood Boil, for example, by 30%. Hard Strike 45. Yeah, I like to use Hard Strike. This is just my personal choice. So this is a very big damage increase, what I see. So I usually tend to take this. This is also, of course, a no-brainer. You just take this. It's just flat out one of the best talents, I feel, in general, because it's so good. You have 6% strength. You have stamina increased by percentage increase, and you have expertise. So I like the increase by percentage, because everything like scales with it. So later on you have some buffs which increase your strength. Also, so this talent results in scaling with it. Also, you have maybe if you go a bit more offensive later on with Rune of the Fallen Crusader, which you will get at level 70, you have a 15% proc of your strength, which will be increased. So it's just adding up, as we will see later, and I really like it. Of course, stamina is always great, so no-brainer for me. Mark of Blood, I think this is situational. Maybe from a raid point of view, it's okay to take. For dungeon running, I don't really see this being a thing, unless maybe you're running with 4 DPS and one tank, maybe one enemy who can off heal or something. Then you maybe take more heal stuff with you. So I would recommend maybe taking this then, but this is some kind of niche. I don't really see this in a 5-man comp working out good. Abomination Smite, this is a no-brainer, of course. Just flat out 10% increase, but also again 2% strength increase. So we have 6% here, we have 2% here. Really like this. As I said, it's all adding up, it's all scaling together. I like it. Now we go into a little bit more Dark Conviction, and until we can progress further. So Hysteria, more or less no-brainer. It's just a no-brainer for me. I just feel this is just too good. It's the best melee cooldown, I would say, in general. I would recommend putting this on a Feral Druid. Maybe after Feral Druid, I would give it to a Rogue. Maybe I would give it to a Warrior then. Probably a Fury Warrior. But yeah, this is very nice damage cooldown. I mean, you can take it on yourself, but honestly, I don't feel this is worth it. So wouldn't recommend. So this is a no-brainer for me. Looking at Bloodworms, I find it okay to take. For example, if you want to run a Blood Furnace, going solo and doing some stuff there by yourself, this is okay to take 3 of those because it will, of course, increase some passive healing. It's I would not say maybe significant, but it adds up. As I tested on the PTR, I feel this is kind of worth it. Although what you have to be considering when you're taking this, that I think I saw 5 at the time, so I'm not really sure if it's capped, but I think it's capped on maybe 5 bloodworms in general. And also what they do is they could add parry haste. So if their melee hits gets parried, and you're tanking some mob, the mob will get parry haste and you will get more damage because the mob will hit faster with the parry haste. So this is, in my point of view, more or less neglectable if you're doing something solo and you're not close to dying. So this just doesn't matter. But of course, in general, I would not really recommend taking bloodworms in a raid encounter or something. I'm not 100% sure if I see that it's worth it to take it for my dungeon running later on from 70 to 80. I would for now not do it. That's just my personal feeling, but yeah, as I said, there are advantages, pro and cons. You can, I would say, yeah, decide for yourself if you think it's okay or not. So improved blood presence. I honestly feel this is a very nice talent because it's giving you some kind of passive healing all the time in Frost Presence. So I think it's very good to take in general, but what you have to consider, it's not 4% of all damage you take will result in healing. It says specifically only like non-periodical damage. So that means your diseases or death and decay damage will not count to this. So only, for example, your heart strikes or blood strikes, your blood boils, your death strikes, your melee hits. This is the stuff you will get the heal 4% of. So this is, of course, something you need to take into consideration when you think about picking this. I think it's okay not to take it. I would say it's in general more important to say and test if your healer is good, and if it's necessary, if you feel like you get overhealing with this all the time, skip it and take something else instead. So I would stick to this for now. I would also recommend taking 5 out of them, and I really like Bloody Vengeance. Although I feel one point is enough. Of course, if you decide to go 2 points left here, you can also go 3 or 3 is also fine. I feel this is 9% physical damage. As I said, physical damage is not diseases are not physical damage, exactly as death and decay. It's not physical damage. So yeah, I mean. This is just your actually hits, death strikes, whatever. This is what it will work with. So I usually feel good with specking like this for now. Yeah, and let's continue. So here we have improved death strike. Of course, this is a no-brainer. It's our most I would say healing and rotational wise, also DPS spell what we use usually in AoE or single target versions. So definitely would recommend taking 2 out of 2 here. No brainer. Crit chance is increased, although this is not important because we will always get heal only by the amount of diseases we have on the target. So it doesn't matter how much damage we take or how much damage we do, or if we crit, it will always heal amount based on the diseases we have on the target. So this is not really important how much damage we take, we deal. It's more important that we just hit something with diseases up, of course. Then we have Vampiric Blood, one of the most strongest cooldowns in the game, I would say, in general. I really like this. Also, you can glyph into this, that it increases the duration for 5 seconds. So what it does is like you get 15% of your maximum health. This is always nice because it's a percentage-wise increase like this, and also you get a lot of more healing received from this for 35%, which is a lot for 10 seconds. Of course, if you glyph into this, it's 15, and this has a 1 minute cooldown. So that means in a perfect situation, you will have it up for 25%, and this is very, very nice. So you can use it by pulling big trash pulls, and just more or less opening with it, or just hold as long as possible and then just pop it to get health back up with some death strikes or rune tap. This is really a very, very nice and efficient talent, what I feel. So for now, just to progress a little bit further, of course, I said this is situational or personal preference, or with this also, I like to go 3 of 3 for the moment, that we can continue to this talent. So yeah, let's continue with this one. This is a key talent. This is what more or less makes Death Knight tank also viable, because it's how to say, cheap version of Argent Defender. Of course, it will not replace this talent, because it's not the same, of course, but yeah, you just get a 15% damage, flat out damage reduction if you're below 35% health, or you get a hit which takes you below that 35%, which is of course a very nice thing, because as this, it's a flat out 15% damage reduction. I would say in general, it should not be up a lot of the time, but in the leveling procedure, I would say this might come in handy, because it's just a little bit more. It adds survivability. That's what I think is important. So I will go with Hard Strike. There's a lot of discussion. I just feel this is a damage increase most of the time, and that's just it. Of course, if you don't want to optimize your damage, I would say don't take it. Take something else. Go for some more defensive build here. I just feel that I like Hard Strike, because I feel there are a lot of encounters where I need to tank maybe 2 mobs in between some bigger pulls, and I really like the Hard Strike, because the Blood Strike doesn't give me the opportunity to hit 2 targets. But of course, this is also a scaling thing, more or less. So it might be that Blood Boil scales a little bit better early game. That's something I need to test. So maybe then you can skip on Hard Strike completely, because you will just Blood Boil even on 2 mobs. I'm not 100% sure, but if it's the case, you can definitely skip it, of course. So the rest of the talents, Might of Mograine, this is pure DPS increase. I would not recommend going further. This is just for DPS blood spec, which a lot of people say it's a meme spec, but honestly I feel it's not. Maybe for now, but until we get some hard caps with armor penetration and whatnot, this is a spec which can actually hit like a fucking truck. And it's actually insane in terms of capability of single target DPS. This might also out DPS a lot of other specs, might be also be the most efficient and most hardest hitting single target DPS DK spec later on. But that's just my assumption based on my knowledge from the private server. So of course, this is everybody else can judge and think what he wants to do. I, for now, tend for the 5-man content not to go with this. I don't feel I have a lot of crit, maybe 10, 12%, depending on the gear you're wearing, of course. And then I really don't see that this is a big thing. Of course, if you have a very, perfectly lined up group with only tier 6 people, and it's just about damage optimization, you could take it. But then I would generally recommend to play a different spec. I will show you also. So this is something I would skip for now. So let's go to the next tier and tree, and I will also explain why I will not start with Frost, or at least why I would start going into Unholy first. So currently we're sitting at a level 53, and the main issue of a Blood Decay tank is that it has a lot of issues, I would say, not with single target aggro, but with AoE situations, because you need to apply your diseases, you need to spread them, and then even if you drop a Death and Decay, of course, Icy Touch will make aggro, a lot of aggro, of course, but you cannot tank 5 mobs only with Icy Touch. This just doesn't add up. So what you need to do is you need to go with Death and Decay, and I feel without this talent, Morbidity, you will have real issues. That's just my testing what I did. I think other content creators of YouTube, they agree with me on this. So I would definitely recommend going here. So this is something you need to do for yourself. We just go over this real quick. Vicious Strikes is really no point in taking this, because we will not pick up Scorched Strike, of course. Plague Strike is something we just take for applying a disease, so this has no use for us, more or less. Virulence is something which is very good. I mean, we just get hit, so I like to take this. Also, this is something I would only recommend doing, for example, if you are confident in your combination of your 5-man. So if your healer is good, if your gear is good, if your gear and your group and everything is not good, I would recommend go more defensive, that you take less damage, just 3% flat avoidance, and just skip the hit. But I would recommend going this if you have the opportunity to do it. And here, although I would love to take, for example, this, because also it will increase strength percentage wise, it's just not wise at the moment, because yeah, we just need the points elsewhere. So I will go with Morbidity. So Morbidity is key talent, more or less, because not of the Death Coil. You want to do Rune Strikes, because they're also off global cooldown, and Death Coil is not, which is important. Because it just flat out decreases the cooldown of Death and Decay by 15 seconds. So usually you have 30 seconds. Now it will decrease to 15 seconds. So that means you can pull, I would say, from trash to trash group with Death and Decay, which is, I mean, just important, because also Death and Decay does a lot of damage. You can glyph into this. Also, I would recommend glyphing into this later on, because I feel it's just too good overall. Yeah, so that's what I would recommend in Unholy. Then I would go with Toughness. In general, this is just 10% armor increase, and also movement and slowing effects is reduced by 30%. This is of course good, because we basically have no mobility, more or less. So this is a good thing. Also the 10%, as we saw here, bladed armor, this has a good, more or less, combination. Yeah, you get more armor, you get also more attack power. This is something I really like. And I would always recommend taking Toughness. It's just very good, because in the early rough dungeons you will have a lot of melee hits, and you will just feel the difference. That's just my experience. Then of course we will go with Icy Touch. Icy Touch is our aggro machine, is incredibly good. It's always important to take, in my point of view, so you should definitely take it. And then I would Runic Power Mastery I would not recommend. I don't feel this is mandatory. I think 100 Runic Power is good. We are mostly spending this on dumping with Rune Strikes, maybe use some defensive cooldowns like AMS or Icebound Fortitude, but in general it's more than sufficient to use to have the 100 Runic Power and not this. So Icy Reach, of course, here we can discuss. This is something some people like to take. Also, I would agree on that. I would say poor leveling from 70 to 80 process. I would not recommend taking this. I would maybe focus more on doing damage. That's why I would take Black Ice. And here we are at level 70 currently. So this is where your talent points are over, more or less. Nerves of Cold Steel, just to finish it, I would recommend taking a two-handed weapon, but I feel it's not mandatory. Also, you can go with two one-handed melee weapons if they provide better stats like hit and expertise to you, maybe defensive rating. You can go with two one-handers. I just feel weapons is not very mandatory, because for me it's more important that a death strike hits, because I have enough expertise. Then I just do more damage with a two-handed sword. If you tank with one-handers, what you can do is, if you have a slow one, just put that in your main hand, because a lot of the spells like Hard Strike or also Death Strike, they just scale with weapon damage. So don't take a fast one in your main hand if you have the possibility to always choose the slower one in your main hand. That's what I would recommend. I will just level up a little bit. I don't know why it takes so long. We will just go to level 80 and would just look at how it would like if we would finish this one. So we're at level 80 now. I would finish with Black Eyes. I would go with Icy Talons. And then I would probably take Endless Winter. Maybe I would go like this. It's also possible, because we can just go over the talents real quick. This will just increase your melee haste. This is a good thing, I would say, and also yeah, in general, of course, you want to strive for this in general, but as I said, for dungeon grinding, it doesn't make sense to go double buff. It's just not worth it, because you are not capable of doing any aggro in AoE terms, and this is what it comes down to if you want to grind dungeons. So, would not recommend double buff, not for the sake of this. Sacrifice this. Lichborn very situational. Don't really see a lot of use in this in the dungeon grind, especially if you run with somebody who can dispel a lot of stuff, like a paladin, for example, or even priests. I think it's just not worth it. You will just not take it. Doesn't make any sense. This is, of course, some usually Frost DPS talent, not really necessary in my point of view. Just gives crit, and that obliterate will not use the diseases. I think it's not necessary. We will not use obliterate, so no use in this. Killing Machine, of course, very important talent if you go into raining later on. You will use this to do shit ton of aggro with Icy Touch, because it crits all the time if it pocs. So usually would recommend taking this. This is more or less not very important, because I really don't feel we are lacking in terms of runic power generation. We have this, for example, so I really don't see any point of taking this. As we saw already, strength is increased by 4%, and also your kick is also free. So going over the first part, 4% strength increase, already amazing talent. 4% we get here, 6% we get here, and 2% we get here. Then we have the Rune of Fallen Crusader in case we take this. This is another 15%. Really like this. And also always keep in mind, if you have strength increase, 25% of your strength will convert into parry. That means you will actually get some survivability out of strength. So you get DPS increase, but also you get a little bit of defense increase, more or less, like avoidance increase, not mitigation, but avoidance. So this makes a lot of sense in my point of view. So this would be more or less the default spec I would be running. Of course, you can take this out, as I said, and go like this. But this is something I would definitely recommend if you go for one of those two specs. I think it's very important to have more or less some kind of this spec in place. It's more or less default, I would say. There's some variances left and right, but in general, it's a no-brainer. And yeah, it's just how you play the Blood Decay in general. So yeah, this is the spec I would recommend, as I said. And now let's switch on to the other spec I would recommend. Okay, so as promised, there is some spec I would like to talk to about, because I feel this has not been shown a lot, but it's more or less specific. Of course, it's specific. I tried it out on the PTR. I really tend to like it, but of course, it's not a substitute of a complete tank spec, what we saw previously. It will not be capable of being the same in terms of blood. It has not the same cooldowns or damage reduction stuff. It's just not that tanky, of course, but in my point of view, it has a lot of advantages, and it will do very much damage. Very much damage. This is what I observed, and also with the gear we'll be seeing, maybe with level 70, I just feel this is crazy damage, and you have also crazy aggro because of this. So let's just go right into it. So what I will build is some kind of unholy tanking spec, which I really, really like. So I will just go with Virulence. This is, as explained previously, a very nice talent for me, at least, I would say. So it's 3% hit and 2 into Anticipation. You could switch this, of course, but for now let's bear with it and continue like this. Epidemic, we'll come to that later, I think. Morbidity, as I said, no-brainer. It has so much potential. It makes a lot of damage, and yeah, it's just crazy good. Then we go with Ravenous Dead. So this is a 3% strength increase, and also your ghoul will have a lot of will profit more of strength and stamina, which is nice. And yeah, this is very nice talent in my point of view, because it's just a flat 3% strength increase. I always like this. Here we have Outbreak. Really not a talent what I would recommend. It's just a DPS talent, not worth picking. Because also we will not use Scorch Strike. We will Death Strike. Because it's a tank spec. So here we skip it for now. We have Corpse Explosion. Corpse Explosion does crazy damage. It is crazy. I did a lot of testing also with my ghoul exploding all the time. It did a really big chunk of damage. I don't know if it's underrated, can't really say, because we have to see when it hits live. Usually you should always take this and also make use out of this. You can turn this in so much damage, it's crazy. Okay, Necrosis. Necrosis, I really feel it's okay to take it, but it's really just to progress further. So for now, I would recommend going with Epidemic first, just a bit quality of life in terms of this, and go with Anticipation a little bit more to progress further, and skip it. Here we have On a Pale Horse. Always would recommend taking this because it's just the travel speed with mounted is increased by 20%. This is crazy. In my point of view, I would take it, but just for the sole purpose of going from 70 to 80. This has no use later on, I would say. So yeah, you could definitely, if you know you will be in the dungeon 24/7, of course you can skip it, but I feel in general it will help you, especially if you're going questing or something. This makes a lot of sense. So Night of the Dead, definitely recommended. Army of the Dead, a cooldown reduction by 4 minutes, and also your pet will not die to all random AoE. So this is just mandatory talent in my point of view. Bloodcake Blade, you can take this. Of course, it's not good if you have a one-handed melee weapon. I would say it's good that you progress further, but I will take another point in Anticipation again and skip it for now. Here we have Unholy Blight. We will usually not use Death Coil a lot. We will also use Rune Strike because it's off global CD and it will allow us to dump runic power, although not needing to waste a global CD on this, so I skip it. And I will take 5 points into this. I feel this is very nice because all your diseases will scale with this. It's just crazy damage increase in my point of view. This one here I like also to skip. I don't really see the point in this. I will show you some talent which I will use later because I feel it's better to use than this, and I just don't see this being worth it, and also we don't really need it. So first we go with Master of Ghouls. This will result in your ghoul being a permanent pet. which is nice. So you have an additional stun in your repertoire, so you can stun a big trash mob, for example, with your ghoul. I like it. Also, you can use your ghoul for corpse explosion to do crazy amount of damage, because corpse explosion is more or less dependent on how much health your ghoul has in this meta, and if you scale your ghoul. Also, if you glyph into your ghoul, you can do even more damage with corpse explosion. We're talking about thousands of damage. It's crazy, honestly. So this is a very strong combination. Usually, I mean, for tanking purposes, it's just not very important. It's just the minion running around and doing some stuff. Of course, you can do some shenanigans with this, but it's not very important. But I would say it's just due to corpse explosion and some stuns here and there, and that's it. But I just like to take it because it's more or less not many points, and it's just there. So here we have another Desecration, for example, is some optional talent. You can use this if you want to kite mobs, or if you want to group them up a little bit more. I don't like this talent. I feel it's not really worth it. It changes the way how you use your plague strikes, so you tend to plague strike a lot more to use this. Really don't see it, why it's so good. Of course, you could use it and make some big pulls maybe with it, but usually I would not recommend it going this way. What I would instead do is go magic suppression, take 3 points into this. Just 6% less damage from all magic flat. This is crazy. Also, your anti-magic shell absorbs additional 25% of spell damage. This is another buff to your AMS, which is a very nice talent. You can cheese so many abilities with, and get also full runic power bar with it. It's incredible and crazy. So definitely take this as a tank. It's just worth it in my point of view. Reaping, really don't see this. It's just Blood Strike and Pestilence. Will convert Blood Runes into Death Runes. Don't really see the point in this. So I choose not to spend any points into here. So instead I will go with 1 point in Anticipation again. And continue further. Desolation, we would like not to use Blood Strikes. We like to use Blood Boil. At least that's what I would like to do. Really don't see the point in taking this, just to keep that stuff up. With all attacks, I mean, okay, this is 5% damage increase in general, which is not bad, but it forces you to use Blood Strike, and that's what I don't like, because you just miss out a lot of Blood Boils. In my point of view, it's just not worth it. Would not recommend taking this. Anti-Magic Zone for dungeon running. This is crazy good. You can save your healer by this. You can save your group by this also. It's just a crazy good cooldown. Also, if you have debuffs on you, for example, you can just place it, and the debuffs damage are reduced by the anti-magic zone. I really like this. It's a strong defensive cooldown in my point of view, if used correctly, and can lead to a lot of good stuff. Unholy Presence, improved Unholy Presence. So this is very nice, just mainly due to the 15% increased movement speed. It's crazy because it makes you run very fast, what I would say, as a blood decay, and you're really lacking mobility. You have no charge. The only thing what you have is a death grip, but you cannot grab a boss, for example. So you have no real mobility, what I would say. So this will help out a lot, and it will also increase your dungeon running speed, because you're the tank and more or less leading the pace. So if you have 15% movement increase, I mean, of course, you can enchant your boots, for example, with 8% movement increase, but still it's 8. It's a little bit more than half of this. But then you can just change it to something else more useful, maybe some rocket boots from engineering, for example. So yeah, this is really a great talent. That's what I say. I would definitely recommend taking this. Ghoul Frenzy, you can take this. I really don't feel it's necessary. I would, for example, go for Blood Cake Blade, purely optional, I would say, and then continue with Crypt Fever. This will make a third disease on your target. and also it increases the damage you deal with your diseases by the target by 30%. So this is a crazy AoE damage increase. And also, that's more important, it will lead to a third disease. Why is that important? It's important because our Death Strike, not the talent, but the Death Strike, scales with diseases on target. For each disease, you get 5% increase of your maximum health. You will be healed. So if you have two, usually you have two. If you play Blood, you have two diseases. So you spec into this. So you have increased healing. But also, if you add a third disease, it will be more or less the same amount you will heal with it. So that's crazy. You have a 15% health gain if you push a death strike with Crypt Fever on the target. Crazy, in my point of view. Then, of course, you pick a Bone Shield, more or less no-brainer. Just use it as much as possible. I would recommend using it as a more or less damage cooldown for maybe single target fights, because in AoE situations, this is just not a big thing. You can use it as a small, very small defensive cooldown. It has only 5 stacks, so if you're running with 10 mobs on you, it covers maybe every second auto hit, and then it's gone. So not really worth, but in general, of course, worth taking it. Then we will just go into Bloodcake Plate 3 of 3. You can change this to Necrosis if you feel this is more worth it. I tend to like this more. But yeah, this is something I would say, if you have 3 points, optional more or less what you do with this. Then we have Wandering Plague. Wandering Plague is the reason more or less why I think this thing will work, and this thing is also crazy. So Wandering Plague, what it does, if you don't know, is that you have a chance and equal to your melee crit chance to cause 100% additional damage to the target and all enemies without 8 yards. So this is just crazy, because the more crit you have, the more AoE damage you do. So it's just passive cleaving all the time, and it's just crazy damage and crazy aggro. So you are more or less a tank, but I would guarantee that you out DPS a lot of DPS with this spec by still tanking a lot of mobs. So it's just why this is so good. I think we're just talking about the Unholy Spec in general because of those 2 talents, more or less. Wandering Plague is one of them, and the other one is Ebon Plaguebringer. So you have Ebon Plague. The Crypt Fever will move into Ebon Plague, which is okay. And it will be an increase of magic damage taken by 13% of the mobs. So if you're running a caster spell cleave combination in your 5-man, you will just buff all the damage from them by 13%. So this is crazy, in my point of view at least. It's more valuable than something like this. 10% AP, for example. I think this is just worth a lot more than this. This here is debatable, of course, 20% melee haste, but still this is a crazy debuff, which is very, very nice. And I think it's just worth going down here because of those 2 talents. So this is what it comes down to. Also, it increases your crit chance by 3%. And as we learned here, we need crit that we will proc Wandering Plague as much as possible. So this is just insanely good. For now, let's stay here. We are level 55 currently. So I just explained all of this. So I will just go over this real quick. I would recommend going into Blade Barrier 5 of 5. I would also recommend going into Bladed Armor and take Sand of Blood 1 at least. Take Rune Tab, of course. Take Death Rune Mastery, because I feel we can also Blood Boil a lot. Although I feel this is more or less not mandatory. It's more personal preference, what I would say. But we could go with it, for example, for now. Improved Rune Tab. And then we just need Dark Conviction, because it's just crit. It's crazy. We have Veteran of the Third War. Very mandatory. It's 6% strength. We have 3% here. We have 6% here. Really like it. We have stamina, and also we have expertise. Really like it. Don't really see this very valuable for us, because also we have a stronger AMS, also anti-magic zone. Really don't feel that it's worth it taking. And here, yeah, this is personal preference. So we can either go put 2 points into here for better blood boil. We could also go into here for more scaling with Wandering Plague. We could also do some stuff like this if we want to min-max a little bit more, or maybe go like this. Put 1 point out of here, lose some AP, get 1% crit. So this is also an option. So you could use this. What you're missing, in my point of view, is toughness. I think it's very important defensive talent, and also this one, improved icy touch. So this decreases the melee and range attack speed of your enemies, which are covered by this by 2% per point. So if you have 3 points into it, this is actually a 6% melee damage decrease, more or less, because of the speed reduction. So you're losing a lot of more or less survivability here. This is what I don't like with this spec, so I would only recommend going into this, even if you have very nice gear. If you have a perfect healer and a good group in general, if you have not a good group, I would not recommend you taking this. I would just go with the default blood spec I showed you earlier. I think you will be way more successful with it than with this one. But this is what I will try out, at least in the 70 to 80 grind. This is what I would try to use. I'm not 100% sure how long it will last for me. If I need to change back at level 75 and go with blood, it might be. But I just feel this is crazy good. It's that, I don't know. It's just you have another DPS in your group. I think it's just crazy damage with Corpse Explosion and a Wandering Plague, Airborne Plaguebringer. This is just crazy in my point of view. So yeah, these are my thoughts in terms of specs. As I said, with glyphs, there are a couple of options. What I would recommend, of course, I would not recommend going with Glyph of Dark Command, for example, in the beginning. Just doesn't make sense to me in the leveling process. Also, this is a very stupid thing. I would never recommend this. So what I would recommend are those two. So either way, Glyph of Death and Decay. In both specs, I would recommend going for this. Just flat out 20% damage increase of Death and Decay. It's just crazy good. It deals really much damage. You have short cooldown on this. You have a lot of scaling if you play Unholy with your diseases and everything, and also with Death and Decay. So would really recommend going with Glyph of Death and Decay. And also, this is just my personal preference, Glyph of Disease is just a easy way to keep your diseases up. Without the need to go Icy Touch and Plague Strike all the time. But of course, you could choose something else. You could, for example, do this one, Glyph of Icebound Fortitude. You could also go with Glyph of Icy Touch. It's a bit misleading. It will increase the damage of Frost Fever by 20%. So this is actually a huge damage increase for one of your diseases, which makes a lot of sense in my point of view in this spec. So if you don't want to go with Glyph of Disease, just take Death and Decay and where was it? Icy Touch. I think this is valid. You can do this. Although, of course, until 80 you just have 2 major slots. So think about it. I would say this is personal preference. About min-maxing, you need to consider what you have in your roster, in your setup, what you need, and you just choose according to this. Minor glyphs, more or less optional. Just quality of life changes a lot. For example, reduce the material costs to 0 for summoning your ghoul. I would recommend doing this. Maybe extending the duration of Horn of Winter by 1 minute. This is also fine. So lots of stuff you can play with, not something I would say is mandatory here. Maybe Corpse Explosion is not a bad talent to take in general, so you could just increase it. But in general, if you're tanking, of course, I just feel like those 8 yards are okay. Of course, you can take it and maybe make more use of out of it. I tend to not use it. I like this one and this one more. Pestilence also same thing. I just don't really feel like I need this. But yeah, of course, personal preference. These are my thoughts. These are my 2 specs I will be running. I'm very open to see also about your thoughts on this. Maybe I just got something also wrong completely. Just let me know. Of course, we can have a discussion about everything what I said. But this is just something I thought about, and I would maybe recommend not to the beginner's DK in RAF, but if you are more or less knowledgeable about the class and the rune and runic power system, and you know how it works in RAF, I think you can definitely check it out, and you will be a very, very valuable core player into your 5-man if you're grinding. That's what I would say. What it comes down to. Of course, we have just go back to gear real quick just to show you this is something I just made. It's not very important, but for example, check out this one. This is from level 80. I just want to find a level 71. There is one. No, it's not here yet. Yeah, it's a bit of pity. I cannot find it for the moment. But in general, there's a PvP set, and the itemization is mainly with crit. So with the Unholy Spec, where crit is very important, as you see here, you get 3%, here you get 5%, and then you have a shit ton of this on your gear. I think I made it. Lord Tank PvP gear. Of course, this is scaling for level 80 now. So of course this is not a lot, but I think on level 70 I might just change this. No, it's not here. But yeah, I mean, if you change this back to 70, you will get a lot of crit rating, probably more than 30% with this gear, because the scaling is just crazy. You see, you have a lot of critical strike rating, and if you just put this into play, you will, I think, hit like a truck with this back on level 70 up to maybe 80. We'll just see how the scaling will be, but it's just crazy. So of course, this is the wrong spec, by the way, not the one I showed you. I think this was it. Yeah, with this spec, you will be crazy good. So yeah, thank you for looking into this. Maybe stay tuned for another update in this regard. And yes, wish you a nice day. Thanks for bearing with me.